My name is Mara Collins, and I was 17 the night my family decided the house was worth saving more than I was. The storm warnings had been screaming across every phone in the county for 2 days. Category 4, mandatory evacuation. People were taping windows, dragging lawn chairs inside, stuffing clothes into trash bags, and leaving before the bridges closed. I thought I was leaving too. I had already put my sneakers by the door and packed food for the 2 dogs and the old gray cat who slept under my bed. Then my mother looked at the animals, looked at the packed cars, and said someone had to stay behind because hotels did not take pets, and thieves loved empty houses after storms. I laughed because I thought she was joking. Nobody laughed back. My father carried plywood to my bedroom window and nailed it shut from the outside. When I asked why he was boarding my room after telling everyone else to get in the car, he said it was so I would not get any ideas once the wind got bad. My mother took the last car. My brother got the back seat. My aunt held a cooler full of snacks on her lap. I stood on the porch with 3 terrified animals behind me while my father flipped the main breaker before leaving. The whole house went dark before the storm even arrived. 6 hours later, my phone died. 19 hours later, I was still sitting in the hallway closet with wet towels under the door. One dog shaking against my ribs, the cat clawing my hoodie, and something heavy slamming into the roof so hard I thought the ceiling was coming down. And I smiled. Not because I was brave, not because I was fine. I smiled because, for the first time in my life, I finally understood exactly what I was to them. But before I tell you what happened 9 years later, when my phone exploded with 53 missed calls and my father begged me to stop, tell me this first. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you listening from? I want to know how far this story travels before they realize the truth did not stay buried in that storm. My father's name was Grant Collins, and the worst part about him was not that he was always cruel. It was that he knew exactly when to act kind, so other people would never believe what happened inside our house. He worked for the county maintenance department for almost 20 years, which meant he understood storm warnings better than most people. He knew what a Category 4 hurricane could do to a roof, a window, a power line, a teenager trapped inside a dark house. My mother, Lydia Collins, worked in the front office of an elementary school and volunteered at church every Thanksgiving. People called her patient, generous, and selfless. They said she had a gift for making children feel safe. I used to wonder if I was the only child that gift never reached. My brother Caleb was 2 years younger than me, but somehow he had always been treated like the child my parents had been waiting for. I was the accident they had too young. He was the second chance they were proud to show off. When Caleb got a B in math, my mother taped the test to the refrigerator and said he was trying his best. When I got straight A's, my father barely looked up from his coffee and said, "That is what you are supposed to do." Caleb got new shoes before school started. I got his old backpack when he decided the zipper was annoying. Caleb got a used truck when he turned 16 because, according to my father, a boy needed independence. I walked 3 miles home from school because, according to the same man, walking built discipline. My Aunt Marlene moved into our house when I was 14 after what she called a rough patch. That rough patch lasted years. She never paid rent, never bought groceries, and somehow still had opinions about how selfish I was. She called Caleb sweetheart and called me dramatic. She told my mother I had a difficult face, like I was always accusing someone of something. Maybe I was. Maybe even then I could feel the truth sitting in every room with us, quiet and ugly. The only person who ever made me feel wanted was my grandmother, Nana June Whitaker. She lived about 15 minutes away in an old blue house with white shutters and a porch swing that squeaked every time the wind came off the water. Nana June was the one who came to my school plays. Even when I only had one line. She was the one who taught me how to drive in an empty church parking lot. She was the one who kept my favorite snacks in her pantry because she noticed my mother only bought what Caleb liked. When I was little, I thought Nana was just extra loving. When I got older, I understood she was filling a space my parents had left empty on purpose. She never said my parents hated me. She was too careful for that. But once, when I was 15, she watched my mother forget my birthday dinner because Caleb had a baseball game. And Nana looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "Baby, never beg people to see you when they have trained themselves to look away." I did not understand how important that sentence would become until the storm, because the night they left me behind with the pets was not some shocking change in who they were. It was not a good family making one bad decision under pressure. It was the most honest thing they had ever done. They had spent my whole life showing me that my comfort came last, my fear came last, my safety came last. The hurricane only gave them a chance to prove it when nobody was watching. And when they came back after 19 hours, soaked from the hotel parking lot and irritated that traffic had been bad, my mother did not run to me. She walked past me and asked if the dogs had ruined the floors. My father checked the windows before he checked my face. Caleb complained that the hotel breakfast had been terrible. Aunt Marlene said she had barely slept because the pillows were too hard. I stood in the hallway with my hoodie still scratched from the cat's claws and told them I thought I was going to die. My mother sighed like I had embarrassed her. "Mara, stop being dramatic. The house is still standing." My father said, "You were old enough to handle it." Caleb smirked and said, "Honestly, I would be grateful they trusted you." Aunt Marlene added, "Some girls your age would love that kind of responsibility." That was the moment I stopped trying to make them understand. I had survived a hurricane, but somehow the quiet after they came home felt colder than the storm. For the next year, I became very good at disappearing while still living under their roof. I stopped telling my mother when something hurt. I stopped asking my father for rides. I stopped reacting when Caleb made jokes about me being the family ghost. I learned that silence could be a shield if you wore it long enough. At school, people thought I was focused. Teachers called me mature. Guidance counselors said I had a strong sense of direction. They did not know that direction was just another word for escape. Every scholarship form I filled out felt like a small door opening. Every college website I visited in secret felt like oxygen. I chose schools far enough away that nobody could ask me to come home for dinner, but close enough that Nana June could still visit if she wanted to. I told no one except her. When I finally admitted I was applying to colleges out of town, Nana did not cry or try to talk me out of it. She made tea, set a plate of butter cookies between us, and asked, "How much money do you need to get free?" I almost broke down right there. Not because I was sad, but because nobody had ever asked me that question before. My parents talked about money like I was a cost. Nana talked about it like it was a tool. I got a full scholarship to a university in Raleigh and chose a program connected to disaster planning, insurance compliance, and coastal property risk. People asked why a girl my age wanted to study hurricane codes, evacuation rules, and insurance reports. I told them storms interested me. That was easier than saying I wanted to understand every system that had failed me. I wanted to know what people were legally required to do, morally required to do, and what happened when they ignored both. The day after graduation, I packed one suitcase and one duffel bag. My mother stood in the kitchen scrolling through her phone while I carried my things to Nana's car. She asked if I was sure I was not making a scene. My father asked when I would be back to help clean out the garage. Caleb told me not to act too fancy just because I was going to college. Aunt Marlene said college girls always came back with attitudes. Nana was waiting outside with the engine running and a box of sandwiches on the passenger seat. I remember looking at the house before I got in the car. Not with sadness, but with this strange, empty calm. Some people leave home and feel like they are losing a part of themselves. I felt like I was leaving behind a costume that had never fit. College did not heal me overnight. Freedom is not magic. The first time a roommate asked where my family was during Parents' Weekend, I lied and said they were busy. The first time a thunderstorm knocked out power in my dorm, I sat on the bathroom floor for 20 minutes before I could make myself stand up. But slowly, I built a life that did not require their approval. I studied harder than anyone around me because I knew exactly what I was running from. I worked part-time in the campus housing office, then interned with a coastal insurance firm, then spent summers reviewing storm damage reports for properties along the coast. I learned how houses failed, how claims were denied, how evacuation plans were written, and how easily people lied when money was involved. Every skill I gained became another lock on the door between me and my family. My parents barely called. When they did, it was because they wanted something small enough to pretend it was not a favor. Could I explain an insurance form? Could I look over a letter from the county? Could I send Caleb money because he had gotten himself into trouble with a car payment? I usually said no. Nana June called every Sunday night. She asked about my classes, my friends, what I was eating, whether I had laughed that week. She visited twice a year and brought homemade pecan bars in a tin box. During one of those visits, when I was 22, she sat in my tiny apartment and told me the truth about the house. My parents had been living in her property for years, paying almost nothing. The old coastal house was hers, not theirs. They had moved in when I was small, because they said they needed help getting on their feet. Then they never left. They treated it like an inheritance they had already received. Nana paid the taxes when they fell behind. Nana covered repairs when they ignored them. Nana kept giving because she thought maybe, if they had stability, they would become better parents. Her voice changed when she said that. It got smaller. I was wrong about them, Mara. I told her not to blame herself. She squeezed my hand and said, I do not blame myself for loving my daughter. I blame myself for hoping love would make her kinder. Then she told me something that made my stomach twist. She had changed her will. The house would go to me. I told Nana June not to do it. That was my first reaction. Not because I did not want the house, but because I knew exactly what would happen. My mother would say I manipulated an old woman. My father would say I stole from the family. Caleb would talk about fairness as if fairness had ever lived in our house. Aunt Marlene would call me greedy from a bedroom she had never paid for. Nana listened to all of that and nodded like she had already expected every word. Then she said, That house protected people who never protected you. When I am gone, I want it to protect you. I did not have an answer for that. 3 years later, Nana passed away in her sleep after making coffee and feeding the birds on her porch. That detail almost broke me. She had left the world the way she lived in it, quietly taking care of something smaller than herself. I flew back for the funeral and kept my distance from my family. My mother cried loudly at the service, leaning into people's arms, accepting comfort like she had been Nana's devoted daughter every day of her life. My father stood stiff beside her, playing the role of grieving son-in-law. Caleb wore a dark suit and looked bored until someone mentioned the house. Aunt Marlene whispered too loudly that Nana had always been strange about me. I did not respond. I had learned that silence made people nervous when they expected you to beg. The will was read 2 weeks later. I was not in the room with them. My attorney called me afterward, and 10 minutes after that my phone started ringing.